the latest news right now is a lot of things going on in boxing, and lately I've been reading a lot of different articles about Crawford, Canelo, Benavidez, and Turkey Al Sheikh. Turkey Al Sheikh, the last time, from what I read and researched about him, he is, the guy that makes the big fights that a lot of promoters in America weren't doing. But at the same time, the big fights that he makes are just name brand fighters versus other name brand fighters that household names, but fighters that are coming up, like that are actually number one contender, that are actually good, but they don't actually have the notoriety. They don't really get those fights done where the number one contender actually earned the fight to fight the champion, where he earned his way move up the ladder. And that's sad because now boxing technical difficulties with my live. It's good that Turkey Al Sheikh makes the big fights, but at the same time is also counterproductive for hardcore boxing fans because the fighters that are coming up in the weight classes that are ranked number one or number two, it's harder for them to actually get a title fight because nobody in the big promotions is going to promote a fighter that actually is dangerous but is not has no notoriety and is not established as in the elite. It has to be a boxer that is known to the masses, and an unknown boxer, for him to be a champion and come up the ranks, it has to be in a weight class where nobody really watches it as much, like the lower weight classes like Oscar Collazo. But in the weight classes where they're the hottest weight classes, like 147, 168, and the heavyweight, it's gatekeeping. With the big names, they're only gonna make big names versus big names, and not necessarily the fights that people want. Like when you think about Canelo, you think Benavidez. That'll be the perfect fight to make between David Benavidez and Canelo. David Benavidez is right now currently the 175-pound WBA champion. And the last interview with Canelo recently, he lashed out, and the interviewer asked Canelo, why you chose to not in these words, I'm just paraphrasing, but he asked Canelo, what turned you off about not fighting, and made you decide not to fight David Benavidez? And he said, I don't really know how to answer that question, but I feel like he's disrespectful, and to not only to me but to everybody. And what he has to kiss his ass? He has to kiss Canelo's ass so he can make the fight. Since when do you have to be a nice guy to get a fight? When you're fighting somebody, it's to prove that you're the best. And David Benavidez is supposed to believe in himself. Like, what does Canelo want? A David Benavidez that's passive and begs Canelo, oh please, I'll be good to you. Just give me the fight. I want to fight. He wants David Benavidez to have a passive personality and not have confidence in himself. Like Canelo's very cocky, and he thinks he can gatekeep well because he got the name recognition, and he said I can choose whoever I want to fight at this point. So he's saying that David Benavidez is not a champion. Canelo said he's not a champion. He's not even in my weight class. But what about Skull? Skull's not a champion, and you're fighting him. And Canelo said, what has David Benavidez accomplished? Nothing. Okay, if you think that David Benavidez didn't accomplish nothing, then why do you fight Edgar Berlanga? What did Edgar Berlanga accomplish? Nothing. The same thing. So he's contradicting himself. He's a hypocrite. Canelo is a hypocrite. He's a big hypocrite. And I'm not hating on him. I'm just calling it how it is. Hey, how you doing, Miss Barbara Simmons? How you doing? Subscribe to that channel. Tony Also Knows Boxing. Subscribe to my channel. Click that like button and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 1,000 followers. My channel's growing because I keep it real. I don't hold back. But back to what I was saying. Canelo is saying that he don't want to fight David Benavidez because David Benavidez disrespectful to everybody, not only me. What he said first was that he don't know how to answer that question when the interviewer asked him, what made you decide not to fight David Benavidez? And he was just basically saying that I don't know how to answer that question. He was saying that. I was like, you don't have, there's no reason for you to deny a fight with him. That's what the fans want to see. The fans don't want to see you fight Crawford. That's just Turkey Al Sheik wanting to make that fight because those are two big household names. And it's easier for Canelo to have a chance to beat Crawford because Crawford's coming from 3 weight classes up. And Canelo thinks he's slick because he's choosing somebody that's physically smaller but has a real big household name where he is considered number one pound for pound. And Canelo tries to undermine him and says, "Oh, like he only has one good fighter on his record." But at the same time, Canelo is choosing to fight Crawford because it makes a lot of money. He's a household name. Those are two big names in boxing, Canelo Alvarez and Crawford, and it's going to make a lot of money and it's less riskier for Canelo. If Canelo fights actually David Benavidez, that's a risky fight, and that's a fight where definitely a lot of people believe and with knowledge based on accomplishments and boxing pedigree of each boxer and what they how they performed in the ring, they say correctly that David Benavidez has a great chance to beat Canelo. And Canelo's not physically big like David Benavidez, but even though Canelo has said that David Benavidez is not even in his weight class, but what about Bivol? Bivol's not in his weight class. Like, Canelo had to move up in that weight to fight him. So he's being a hypocrite again. Yeah, Canelo's being a hypocrite. And I feel like David Benavidez is the fight that the fans really want to watch. And he said, what's the guy that they mentioned? They asked him, who do you think is the best uh, possible Mexican opponent to fight you that's coming up, or anybody that's actually Mexican that's coming up? And he mentioned somebody that I never heard about. I forgot the name that he said. Something I forgot the name, but Canelo said that there's a Mexican fighter that nobody ever heard of. That he would give him the opportunity, not in those words, but he said he would give him that opportunity. But at the same time, he's picking and choosing because he's doing the safest thing that he could do in the last part of his career, because he knows he don't have the same reflexes, the same reflexes like he used to have when he was in his prime. He is no longer in his prime. That's the reason why he fights the easiest fights possible, like Edgar Berlanga. What did Edgar Berlanga accomplish? Nothing, nothing. But you don't say that because Edgar Berlanga, his name rings bells in the boxing scene, and he has a strong fan base. So that's why you mention fighters like that, but he has no accomplishments. Just because people know who he is, he's never been a champion ever, and he's never fought anybody worthy to get a fight with Canelo Alvarez. But the business politics of boxing. This is the love and hate relationship I have with boxing. But I'll subscribe to that channel. Tony also knows boxing. Yeah, so Crawford, from what I read, latest news about Crawford, Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford said that he already has everything planned out as far as what he's gonna do. He's gonna get a fight with Canelo Alvarez in September, and then after that, he plans to fight Sebastian Fundora. That's what he said. But I'm saying if Sebastian Fundora loses to Xander Zayas, that'll make it really interesting to see a fight between Xander Zayas and Terence Crawford. So I feel like right there, I would say Crawford will win a fight between Xander Zayas, and a fight between Crawford and Sebastian Fundora. I think that Crawford will have the upper hand, but you never know because the power is really serious and styles make fights. So I believe that he's Crawford. If he was to fight Xander Zayas, I would root for Xander Zayas as a Boricua, as a Puerto Rican. I would root for Xander Zayas, and he does have possibilities to win, but it would have to be that Crawford actually slowed down and he's no longer the same Crawford, or basically if Crawford has slowed down already, the signs that he has slowed down would be when in the fight that he had with Madrimov. We saw Crawford win that fight. I believe he won that fight, but a lot of people say that the fight could have went either way. And there's some people that believe that Madrimov won that fight, but I think Crawford did enough to win. But it was a close fight, and I feel like maybe those are signs that he is slowing down, and that's why Canelo wants to fight him because he no longer moves the way he used to, or maybe he did that with Madrimov because he thought that he could slug it out with him and win like that. Technical difficulties again. Yeah, I think that when you compare, people say, oh, if Crawford looked the way he looked against Madrimov, how's he gonna beat Canelo, who is a lot better than Madrimov, and uh, they basically think that Canelo can actually box like Madrimov. I don't think so. I think Canelo is overrated. He's overrated. I'm not saying he's not good, but he's average. If you would compare him to like the '90s era and the '80s era, I think Canelo is pretty average. If you compare him to Felix Tito Trinidad, I think he's average. But he's good for now for today's boxing because the only competition he has is David Benavidez, and I feel like that's the fight that should be made. And Canelo is so like I said, Terrence Crawford plans to fight uh, Canelo in September, which is they're already making that fight. And he says that he also wants to fight after Canelo. He wants to fight. He's what happens if Sebastian Fundora loses and to Zayas, and Zayas gets to fight Crawford. Who do you think will win in that fight? Do you think Zayas has a chance against Crawford? I mean, I'm gonna root for him, but Crawford is a serious talent. It all depends on which Crawford we get because Crawford, if he slowed down, maybe Zayas, he has a 50-50 chance, but I think Crawford wins the fight. But if I'm still gonna root for Zayas, but if Zayas beats Crawford and Crawford looks good in the fight, and then it's just youth versus an older fighter, but he still has a lot left in the tank, I would be really impressed with Zayas winning, and I feel like that's a 60-40 fight, more on Terrence Crawford's side of winning. I don't think that Zayas is ready for a Crawford, but he might be. Well, it all depends on. I got to see how he looks against Sebastian Fundora because you know that's not really a gauge how to determine how he would deal with a boxer puncher like Crawford, but it's a gauge on how he's advanced in his career, Zayas, because he's been looking really, really good in his last three fights. And but this is another level. This is Crawford. This is actually Crawford, and this is actually Sebastian Fundora, which Sebastian Fundora beat legitimate Tim Tszyu in the light heavyweight. I think light junior middleweight division. Yep. So I like Keith Thurman the way he looked in his last fight. What do you guys think about Keith Thurman, his last performance? But he fought a unknown Australian boxer, undefeated, that I never heard of, but it's a good comeback fight. To come back with a power punch like that nobody knows about, but had a good knockout ratio in his record. Forgot his record, but Keith Thurman has always been one of the fighters that I like. I wish I could have seen Keith Thurman versus Errol Spence, but that never happened. I don't even know if Errol Spence is going to come back. There's rumors that he is, and then Sebastian Fundora wanted to fight him originally, but the fight that's going to be made on June 21st, I think. Don't quote me, but I think that's more than likely is going to happen. The last thing I read, that Sebastian Fundora versus Xander Zayas, June 21st. So there's a lot of good boxing fights out there, but I think Canelo is he's overrated. A lot of people are going to probably think that I'm hating, but I'm not hating. I'm just calling it how it is. A lot of people are just sensitive now. They just don't know how to handle the critical thinking. That's what we're supposed to have. We're supposed to call things the way they are based on the knowledge that we have and make an assessment like without being, without being biased. So I feel like Canelo is so ridiculous right now. He's just fighting for the money. And you got to fight for the money, but it can't be. What about your legacy? And he said his legacy is set, but I don't want to get into his opponents, and and his close victories that he had against elite fighters and not looking so dominant. And I feel like uh, Crawford is gonna be making a lot of they're gonna get a lot of views with that fight with Crawford versus Canelo. But I feel like it's a dangerous fight for Crawford. But if Crawford could master the boxing and keep Canelo at bay, he has a chance of winning. I wouldn't be surprised. You know, Madrimov is not the same as Canelo. I think Madrimov has more skills than Canelo, and a lot of people are basing it. Oh, Canelo's more famous, so he's better. No, no, I think Madrimov was a better fighter with ability wise, boxing wise, you know, than Canelo, and I think that's the reason why he made it a close fight with Crawford. But then we seen how styles make fights. Virgil Ortiz knocked out Madrimov and had no problems with him, but you know that doesn't mean that he's gonna knock out Crawford because styles make fights. But it makes it interesting because we're gonna see how would a Virgil Ortiz fight versus Crawford play out. That's another thing, guys. Give me your feedback in the comments. I really would appreciate it. All my fans tuning in, just how you doing? Mayon Do MT Mayon NTN Do. How you doing? How you doing? Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my channel. Thanks for tuning in. Don't be afraid to click that subscribe button. Tony also knows boxing. Subscribe to my channel. One love. Peace. Enjoy the rest of your day and your week.